Erev Tov B'Tay. I think that today, B'ezras Hashem, is going to be the last day for Avinu Malkeinu. Tomorrow we don't have to say anymore. Because the war already stopped, They stopped shooting, they stopped whatever, right? All kinds of stuff. So I think tomorrow will be okay. Tomorrow, B'ezras Hashem, it's going to be Rosh Chodesh tomorrow night. So we're going to stop the war and go into Rosh Chodesh, B'ezras Hashem. Next phase. B'ezras Hashem. So this morning, Trump was upset. He was yelling and screaming, why are they still shooting? This one's shooting, this one's shooting. So everybody got scared, they stopped shooting, they stopped. They're all scared of him. He's a tough guy, what can I tell you? That's the way it is. Okay, we need somebody, to be the policeman of the world. We need somebody, has to be somebody, has to be the policeman. That's the way it is. It's better this way. Okay, so B'ezras Hashem, tomorrow we don't need to, but anyway, I want to get into an interesting question, which is about, eating. When a person, is eating a seudah or whatever, or is eating some kind of food, the question is like this, right? Right, that once you make the bracha for a food, whether it's hamotzi, or it's mezonot, or borei pri ha'etz, whatever it is, right? Once you make the bracha, you're not allowed to talk. You have to eat the food right away. Right? Why? Because if you talk, you're getting into something else there, hefsek. So, for sure, right, lechatchila, a person should never do that, right? Once you say hamotzi, mezonot, whatever, eat the food right away. Don't wait. Don't talk. Right? It's asur. But the question is like this, right? Bediavad, let's say he did talk, So now what happens over here? What's the story? So bediavad, the rule is like this, that if he talked about something which is about the food, that they're eating, he said something about the food. So what did he say? For instance, let's say, for hamotzi, he said, oh, bring the salt, I need salt, like this, right? It's about the food. It's about the seudah. Or let's say, he said, this guy, give him also some food. He doesn't have this guy. Give it to him. He said something like this, right? So since he spoke about the food, bediavad, it's not considered to be hefsek. So therefore, he doesn't have to go and bless again. Hamotzi, right? It's good. Bediavad. He's okay. Lechatchila, as we said, shouldn't do that. But if he spoke about something which is not about the food, let's say he spoke about, I don't know, whatever, he's going to the bank, whatever, or something like this, right? Pay the rent, I don't know, something like this. He spoke about something which has nothing to do with the food. So there he has to make the bracha again. Why? Because it was hefsek. This is no good. That bracha is no good. Right? You have to make the bracha again, unfortunately, which is really bad because it's a bracha l'batala. So it's not a good thing to do, this kind of a thing. But if he made a mistake, sometimes it happens, people make mistakes. If he spoke about something else, he has to make the bracha again. Right? That's the thing. What can you do? But this only applies if he made the bracha for the food. Mezonot, hamotzi, right? It's a borei pri ha'etz, something like this. But, she'akol. But what about, what about after netilat yadayim, right? He made al netilat yadayim, and then he talked before he made the bracha. What about this? Does he have to make the bracha again? Yeah. So here, right, the truth is, the Ashkenazim are a little bit more stringent about this. They are very strict not to talk after netilat yadayim. They don't talk, they just sit there like this on the table, right? They don't say nothing. And if somebody says something, they say, shh. They tell them, don't talk, don't talk. Right, but sometimes you got to wait. Let's say they have to bring the bread or something, whatever. They didn't bring the bread yet. Or, the guy who's blessing, is not there, whatever. So you got to wait a little bit sometimes, Because also when you have a group, like there's 10 people, doing netilat yadayim. It takes like 2-3 minutes, Right. Everybody has to finish. So it takes a little, so you got to wait a little bit, like this, So the question is, are you allowed to talk? The Ashkenazim are very strict. They don't talk over there. Right? They don't talk, yeah. Because there's Yerushalmi like this, that it's a good thing not to talk. But, on the other hand, right, we Sfaradim, according to Shulchan Aruch, we're not so makbid about this, about this. What does that mean? After you make netilat yadayim, they're not so makbid to talk a little bit, after that. Until they do hamotzi. They're allowed to talk. Because Shulchan Aruch says you're allowed to, So therefore, according to Talmud Bavli, there's no problem with that. So therefore, we're Sephardim, we're not Ashkenazim. There's no Ashkenazim over here. I think so. Maybe there's some secret people, I don't know, whatever, right? Undercover Ashkenazim, right? Maybe they have some spies over here. But anyway, right, the point is that they're strict about it, we're not so strict, So we don't have to be so crazy about that. If a person has a need to say something to his friend, before the Hamotzi, he's allowed to say. It's okay, But the truth is, if you don't need to, better not to do nothing, Don't say nothing. Because it's better, because Yerushalmi says like this, that if you don't talk after Netilat Yadayim, says Yerushalmi, you will be protected all that meal. Nothing bad will happen to you. It's a segula, for protection. So therefore, it's better not to talk if you don't need. You know what I mean? But if you need to talk and something there, whatever you need to say, okay, it's necessary. It's necessary. You can talk. According to our custom, you're allowed to talk. But once you do hamotzi, that's something else, right? Over there, it's not allowed to talk. Right? No way. We don't allow that. That's the way it works, So, okay, that's one halakha I wanted to tell you. Another halakha is also interesting. This one comes up, sometimes. What happens is like this. Let's say you got like a group of people, friends, 3 friends. They're eating together, So what happens is that because he wants to speak with his friend, he makes a bracha on the food, and he puts it in his mouth and he starts chewing, But he didn't swallow it yet. You know what I mean? He's chewing. So now the question is, are you allowed to talk at that time? Once you put the food in your mouth, to say something to your friend? Sometimes your friend is bothering you, He's like, telling you, making your head crazy, right? Talking. So you want to answer him, because you want to get him off your back already. He's bothering you. So sometimes, you have a situation like this. So the rule is like this, the lechatchila, once a person has chewed the food, put it in his mouth, he's not allowed to talk until he swallows it. Wait till you swallow. You know why this is? Because even though when you chew the food, right, you taste it, so you got some hana from there, right, you got some enjoyment from it already, even before you swallowed it. You enjoyed it. But the thing is like this, that even though you enjoy it, but really eating is only called when you swallow, That's what's really called eating, when you swallow something. Where do we see that? Because there is a halakha like this, in the Shulchan Aruch, different place. It talks about this, What about if a person, right, let's say, common case, right? He's cooking some food, Erev Shabbat, right? Making some nice dishes, right? So how it is, right? People who cook, the ladies, or if there's a man, right, who's a chef, he likes to cook. You know what they always do, right? They always like to taste the food, because they want to see there's enough spices, enough salt, enough pepper, right? Everything is good, balance is good, taste is good. The ladies are always doing this, Sometimes, they're not so particular. What they do is, they even put their hand in there, I go like this, Even though we don't like this today, germs, we're concerned about germs, But in the old days, women, they didn't know nothing about germs. They just put their hand in there, they taste it, and then they put it back again, All the germs are getting in there. But, in the old days, who cared about that, right? Nobody knew about germs. Nobody cared about these things. So anyway, right, whatever it is, nowadays, by the way, people do care, So a person, should be careful probably, not to do this like this. Also another thing, which is not good to do, you take a spoon, right? And you want to taste the dish, and you take it with a spoon and you put it back again, all your germs are getting into the food, you know what I mean? Not so good to do this kind of thing. So even though the old generation, the ladies, they didn't care about these things, but now people do care, I'll tell you something interesting, one time, my son, she saw a certain lady, who was preparing, they were with us for a Seudah. So he saw a certain lady, who was preparing the food, and he saw that, she's taking the spoon and tasting and putting it back, like this, this kind of thing, right? You know what he did? He got so disgusted, he never ate her food again, ever. For many years, never ate again. Because he's so scared about the germs, Oh, this is not the way. I'm sorry, what do you say?
Cooking.
Yeah, you're right, but today, the young people, they're crazy about germs, Oh my God, they're crazy. You know how it is, right? Today, people are very sensitive, Especially after COVID now, it's even worse, right? Got even worse. Whatever it is, right? So, okay, whatever it is, you know. Probably better today, nowadays, not to do this anymore. People don't like it. I don't know, whatever, you know. It's whatever. I personally, you know, I'm not so scared about it, you know what I mean? But I also don't like it, you know. Like this, you know. You're putting your saliva, you know, back into the dish, you know what I mean? It's not nice, you know.
People who's cooking all the time tasting and put it back.
Yeah, you're right. Of course. Yeah, okay. Okay, so for your family is good. But the younger people, I'm telling you, oh my God, they're scared about this. They're very scared. Okay, whatever. Anyway, right? So getting back to what we said, right? That it says in the Shulchan Aruch over there about tasting food. It says that if you want to just taste the food, but you don't want, you know, you're going to taste a little bit. You know what I mean? So what's the rule? Do you make a bracha or not? You're just tasting. You don't want to eat now. Just to taste it. Do you have to make a bracha? No. So the answer is no. He knows, right? Go ahead. Right? You don't make a bracha when you taste the food. Why? Because you're not eating, you're tasting. That's something else. The rabbi said, you don't need to make a bracha for this. You know, unless you're tasting a lot, you know, a big amount. You know what I mean? Like 80 grams, you know, a lot of food, you know, then you already ate a lot, you know, so you have to make a bracha. But until then, until 80 grams, until 80 cc, you don't have to make a bracha when you taste something. Unless you want to eat it, that's something else. If your intention is to eat it, that's something else. I'm not talking about that. Okay, whatever, you got the idea, right? So anyway, you see, what do we see from there? We see that tasting, right, is not really called eating. You know why? Because otherwise you would have to make a bracha. You know, so tasting is not really called eating. And this is the reason why we say over here, you know, that what? That when you just taste the food, you put it and you chew it in your mouth, you didn't swallow it, you still didn't eat it. So therefore we tell you, right, don't talk at that time until you swallow the food. Wait, you know, your friend can wait, you know, your friend, you know, is making you crazy, you know, making you nuts, right? But who cares, right? You know, have a little patience. Wait 2 seconds, let me swallow my food. No, derech eretz, you know, what is it with you? You know what I mean? That's what you got to tell them, you know, like this, right? So you shouldn't talk. What about bediavad, though, you know? Bediavad. Let's say he did talk, right, before he swallowed it. Does he have to make another bracha now? That's the question, right? So here it's a little bit different. It says in Magen Avraham, you don't have to make a bracha. You know, if you talked before you swallowed it, you don't need another bracha. What's the reason why? So he says because that which we say over there, you know, regarding tasting, that you don't make a bracha, that's because your intention is to taste it. But here, your intention is to eat. So even tasting it is something, you know? When you're, it has to do with the mind, you know? It all has to do with what you're thinking. So therefore, you know, if your intention is to eat it, says Magen Avraham, b'diavad, right? If you did talk, you don't have to make another bracha. And that's the way it says in the Chazon Ovadia, Amar Rabbi, Amar Shalom. ברוך ה' לעולם, אמן ואמן. רבי חנינא בן השומר, עשה הקדוש ברוך הוא לזוגות ישראל, לפיכך חיבר להם תורה מצוות שנאמר לו חופש, למען צדקו יגדיל תורה וידיר.